Alright guys, welcome back. Alright everybody, welcome back to the grand final in TWC12. I was going to say 11, and it would have been the exact same matchup in 11 I believe, for the Americas Trials. So this is basically the reserve league if you will. There's no cash prize for this tournament, but it's more or less a training tournament for the main event, which has a cash prize and it's held bi-weekly. So big thanks for Adico for running this. So yeah guys, just join the Discord if you want to sign up, or come tune in to the games when they actually happen live. So we've got Stormkeeper going for English, and he's gone for a fairly standard 2 on gold, 2 on food, 2 on wood, and he's building the house and getting the mill. So he's going for a pretty much Beastie's guide build here at the start. And he's up against Diego, who's picked the French, who is also going for early wood, gold and food, but he's actually got a little bit of wood early on here to get his mill. But he's going to actually start his hunt eco now. And he can actually afford wheelbarrow, but given that it's cheaper being French, so he might actually opt, he is going to opt for an early wheelbarrow. Interesting, but it's a good build, I think, with the way he set it up. So he's going to have access to wheelbarrow. He's going to already have 8 on food, so he might go up to a 9th or just go straight on the gold. And then he sets himself up so he can already go on the wood. So I do like this opening from him. I might actually copy this off him, because I've gone for something similar, but I'm a bit of a newer player, so I no doubt fuck up the wheelbarrow and have to get it much later than this, but I like this sort of style for this map. Obviously, it's pretty map dependent, because he's gone straight for a hunt that's very, very safe. Only just outside of his town centre range there. So he'll be able to save knights, save vills. In the event his knight aggression doesn't work, or he opts to go for a more defensive opening, given that his opponent's English, so they probably are one of the better civs to try and deal with early French aggression. The 2 civs are pretty much unanimously the best civs to try and fuck your opponent up in Feudal Age. And that's because French, they're the most straightforward early knight civ. English are the most straightforward early man-at-arms civ. So compared to their rivals, Rus in French's case, Rus is a lot about eco efficiency and making use of unique eco mechanics to try and get an early second town centre and a quick age 3. While English, compared to HRE, again HRE, they've got some more flavoursome eco mechanics, early access to monks, so that they can, through the prelates, so who they actually get their eco steroids from. You can take a quick castle and try and secure all the relics, whereas obviously the English player has to sort of tech into monks through the monastery from age 3. But in saying that, the men-at-arms kick in the first stage, so you don't even have to wait for feudal. And then on top of that, their longbows are just the best archer. Extra damage, extra range, costs a little bit more, but your landmark is designed to print them at double the speed of an archery. And then given that you've got man-at-arms, you've actually got access to a heavy unit from very early on in the game as well, so you've got a nice unit to tank cavalry charge, or to tank archers, and force sort of suboptimal archer use from your opponent. So yeah, I do think English is probably one of the best civs to try and make the knight aggression a little bit futile, because they're just going to have the perfect range unit in feudal. And, longbows are shit against knights still, but archers are just absolutely fucking terrible against heavy units. because longbows have that little bit of extra damage and range. And then, you know, you can snipe range v ranged as English so easily. French, you really got to rely on keeping your knights out of the fight and actually trying to engage with archers, so that his spears try and fight your archers, so then you can pick off the archers. I mean, pick off the spears instead of the archers with your longbows. I mean, with your knights. Sorry. Sort of rambling now. Yeah, with French, sorry, with English, you sort of need to be careful of the knights, but thin out the archer numbers enough so that you can just go balls deep with your spears. Or French, you know, you want to do the opposite. You sort of want to have your archers pick off greedy spear or archer usage from the English before you then engage at the last minute with knights so they don't get fucked up by spears. So Diego letting that Vil get awfully low there, but his knight timing is really good, so he'll be able to save it, swap it over for a full health villager. And now his knight's chasing down some low health scouts. The knights, well, pretty much all the cavalry that are melee other than scouts get access to a charge. So Stormkeeper's going to try and wall himself in somewhat, or at least just make it a pain in the ass to try and run around with the knights, because if they've got to head all the way around here to hit the back, it becomes much easier to just park your army here and a handful of spears over here or over here, and you're pretty much safe until castle. And then just sort of rely on the French player throwing some knights away, and then you can push. Well, the French player, you sort of want the English player to push a bit preemptively, sneak some knights in or some horsemen into his base while there's minimal units to defend. Pull back out of the raids and then actually take some fights once you've got a bit of value out of raiding. So Diego, he's trying to take down this villager that's been building the walls for Stormkeeper, but he manages to pick off the one spear, which is actually quite nice for him, because he can always just have chivalry and regen through this. And he's even getting iron undermesh, so he's taking less damage from the ranged. You'd think, oh well, what about the spears? But you know, in a minute or two, this is going to become very ranged based army for Stormkeeper. I think he's probably going to add some more ranges after this blacksmith. He might add another barracks just to keep up the spear numbers, but then from there, I think he's going to add more and more ranges, because obviously in Castle Age, his real counter to the knights is going to be crossbows. Not so much the longbows, which you can only make out of his actual ranges, not the council hall. Well, Diego gonna want to try and shut down the chance for the English player to get a free Castle Age, if you will. So keep massing up some knights, but also start getting some archers. This hunt's nearly out, but at the same time, there's literally still sheep for the French player. Diego just needs to bring that back. What's he doing? Send your sheep home, man. Come on. Be super efficient French player. So, Stormkeeper is adding a second barracks. But I don't know if he's going to add a third one from there, or if he's just going to add more and more ranges, which I think is what he's probably going to do. And then in Castle, it's sort of up to him whether he adds more barracks or switches to stables. But I mean, he could stay rack-centric, given that Man-at-Arms for HRE and for English are just extra strong as well, because they've got these unique techs. So basically, HRE and English Man-at-Arms can get away with fighting anything, except into big crossbow balls they can't get on top of, and into area damage siege like mangonels. So the French player gonna probably want to actually keep adding ranges and stables in roughly even numbers, I think. Maybe just stay one stables ahead of his range count, like always go stables range, stables range, stables range, as such. But the beauty is, when he gets the castle, that's pretty much the comp he's going to want to stay on until he goes all the way to late feudal. I mean late imperial, because crossbow knight is just a nice super mobile comp that really fucks up any heavy armor, and any light armor. And you need just a minimal number of archers in the mix, or a minimal number of horsemen in the mix, just to help against any archers from your opponent. Like, given that it's English, you might not just want knights and crossbows, because you know, your knights might not get onto the backline of crossbows and longbows. So it's nice to also have some horsemen, upgraded ones too, mind you. It's nice to also just have some of them in the mix, even though they're not as heavy as the knights. You know, you got a faster training cab that you can just take repeat fights before your opponent actually maxes out for good. You know, you're not going to necessarily have your most late game composition in all your mid game fights. I mean, the English player is going to want to eventually outpost creep, because it's just a little bonus that you're going to get over everyone. So they and Mongols and Rus in particular, very, very good for creeping with your outposts. French not so much. I mean, outpost creeping's good with any civ, because it gives you the option to garrison villages that are around that, you know, you might want to have repair siege. Garrison monks you've got around that you might want to have healing, but not necessarily have them out in the fight, and also have them deal useful damage. And you get Springwood upgrade, deal shitloads of damage out of them. You know, and even if you've got like units that are useless in the rest of the fight that your opponent's got, you could even garrison like spears or something. Your opponent's got shitloads of mangonels and archers. Oh, well, alright, well, I'll garrison all my squishy melee and all my squishy smaller ranged units and just have cavalry and towers. So Castle Age already for both players here. 12 minutes in. They both played pretty passively and just sort of build up an army. Diego's not really even gone for any raiding commitment other than sniping that initial spearman, which is a bit of a funny choice. But Stormkeeper's basically walled himself in to get a triple town center build set up here, while Diego has also basically gone for the same thing, other than the fact that he's got a guild hall. His town center's been a little bit quicker. Oh, and this idling, it's going to hurt him a little bit, but he's probably going to figure out where he's best off going to get some more food at this stage, which he's just going to go for the berries now. Because, I mean, he can always... These little hunts here, he's going to have to creep this one up to here anyway. Like, it's only... Basically, the two of these makes for a full hunt. And then on top of that, sort of not much more food to get over here other than these berries. And then they're sort of awkwardly positioned. You can't really head out through here. Stormkeeper, a little bit more food access in these walls. One of these mini hunts over here. But the other mini hunt for him, it's unfortunately outside his walls here. But not dangerously so. Like, I mean, he can always just tower and wall up here and got a nice high ground. Can pinch that relic. So, relics, you know, I think they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no 6 relics, there's only the 5. And they are probably a little bit closer to Stormkeeper overall, really. Like, this one here is a bit awkward for both players to get, but I think it's definitely easier for Stormkeeper. Same with this one. This one's not too bad for Diego to grab. This one also, but then, yeah, I think Stormkeeper definitely has the edge with the relics on this spawn. So, armory upgrades. Stormkeeper has melee and... Sorry, has ranged damage and armor. While Diego has got melee damage 1 and 2. And he's got ranged damage and armor. It's interesting to see Stormkeeper's got ranged armor already, rather than melee armor. I suppose it makes fighting under the towers easier, because Diego gonna be able to tower creep much the same. I mean, he's got Springald in placement, and Dieg's pretty known for playing pretty heavily around fortified towers. So now that that's kicked in, Stormkeeper's really got to emphasize taking the fight against the army over against the tower, and then just try and change directions himself and look at getting siege to break the towers here. But that's nice for him. A little bit slow though. It means this whole time he hasn't been fighting with that nice attack speed buff, and it's pretty significant. I think it's 25%. So both players having a back down there. Dieg has a little bit more in the bank here at the moment over Stormkeeper. So we got 69 Vils and 7 military, 59 Vils and 13 military. So Stormkeeper's slightly slower with the second town centre, but he has actually got 3, whereas the French player, I don't know how many villages the guild hall actually works out to being, and I know it actually ramps up in terms of how many resources it's generating. The longer you leave it, the more it generates. In the sense, I don't think it's like a flat rate. At least I didn't think so. I could be wrong. You'll have to... That was sort of my impression from the tooltip though. So... French main, by the way. This game's sort of slowing down a bit here, both these players. Looking to just gather a bit, prepare themselves to either go for feudal or for a very expensive castle age where they're maxing out, getting keeps and towers. But it's nice that Dieg's always preparing himself with having these outposts down. It was good of him to actually get this outpost upgraded in the middle of that fight. Made it really hard for Stormkeeper, while his own outpost being late sort of made things very messy there, because with English you generally want to be the player fighting under... fighting in a fight with your own, with the tower advantage, because you know you not only have the tower, but you also get that insane buff. Mongols as well, but I mean, movement speed won't outright win you a fight like attack speed will. It'll just mean you can disengage or re-engage a little bit cleaner. So yeah, I think that fight might really determine the course of this game from here. But Stormkeeper probably has the opportunity to try and hit this gold mine, given that Dieg's going so greedily on it. 27 villages with only this tower that's not upgraded yet to support it. And Dieg already on the treb, whereas I don't think Stormkeeper has gone for one yet. And Stormkeeper probably wants to look at putting a wall segment or a house here to block that again so knights can't hit through here, and transfer these villages to either here or onto one of these small clumps over here, like, or even just put the thing right down the middle here, work your way through these 3 clumps. Because the problem with this is, particularly against a cavalry civ or an opponent that's transitioned to a cavalry comp, you know, there's now space here. Those trees have been chopped down, so you can run over that. And you do that, and you get through on all these farms, all these little villages, have to run for their lives. Dieg can look at trying to wall Stormkeeper in somewhat, because I think he's going to look at maybe going for the relic control now, going for sacred control. So he has started monk production. He's going to start controlling the sacreds, and from there probably clean up all the relics, in hopes that the English player hasn't already started going for them all himself, because Stormkeeper is on the job there. So, a monk in queue. And there'll be a monk in queue. Oh, there is a monk, so we were looking earlier. So neither of these guys have really any advantage with their monks. It's not like Rus, where they've got theirs is mounted and acts like a knight. But a big fight going on now, and Stormkeeper's really able to break the hold that Dieg had here. I think his units were a little bit split up. I've had a few less on the field there, but now that there's not really a lot of a front line, I don't think there's a lot of crossbows in the mix here. And once their numbers get thinned down, these knights become quite dangerous. So now Dieg's able to keep creeping forward. The crossbows, the arbs he's got himself, a little bit like a crossbow, but I think they're also a little bit better against light units than the regular crossbow. And they're really good against the man-at-arms, so Stormkeeper's probably actually going to want to keep a lot of Spearmen in the mix because they're a little bit better on cost than man-at-arms are at tanking the damage of the ARBs. And on top of that, it just denies any chance of DA retransitioning back into a big knight count. That's really smart of DA because unlike relics, sacreds actually are a win condition, so if you manage to contest all 2 or all 3 on the map, you can actually win the game in 10 minutes time if you hold them for that 10 minutes. Relics are really useful in the fact though that once you grab them, you take them back home, so your opponent has to break into your base to steal them back off you, whereas the gold from sacreds is definitely not anywhere near as much of a given. Stormkeeper going for the relic here, and he can always come back and grab this sacred. Although, having not walled up to grab it, he's a little lucky that DA didn't have like a tower there or a handful of ARBs there to pick him off. But yeah, guys, that's sort of the decision-making difference between sacreds and the relics, I suppose. Is that the relics guaranteed income, but they won't win you the game on their own. You've got to sort of rely on the actual gathering benefit, or to get a wicked convert off, and then you're sort of using them like sacreds. But Stormkeeper creeping up in order to try and engage Dieg here, because there's nothing of a front line left for Dieg now. And on top of that, that red palace, he wants to try and finish that off. But he's fighting under an outpost, and there is Springald here to back this up as well. And I think ultimately Stormkeeper is going to have to retreat. He's not going to be able to stick around and clean up one of the trebs, which I think was his intent there. And so DA going to be able to finish up the red palace now. He's got 10 villagers building that. And there's 9 repairing Stormkeeper's fort, but I think he probably needs another 3 or 4 to actually repair through the damage of this. Oh, and I think he might have even just more or less given up on trying to repair this through. But at the same time, he has his own treb to try and take out the outpost, which I think is his idea. As long as this stays up long enough to keep the Springald back and get his opponent's outpost. But there's a sacred site number 2 here for Dieg. And he might just keep trying to creep forward. And he is. He's pinching the gold here of Stormkeeper. So a bit ballsy, but at the same time, it means that if Stormkeeper can't get out here for gold, now he's really stuffed and relying almost purely on relic gold. So yeah, there is only another relic here, and the one over here is pretty safe, and the one over here. So, and the top side one's been denied. So yeah, Stormkeeper's really being starved for gold now, I think. So he still has this mine, but when this runs out, it's pretty much it for him. He needs to actually try and torch this wall in this segment, pinch that relic, and get on that gold mine in order to actually take this game to late game from here. Because he can also look at trading. Like, I mean, he could get a market maybe here, and a market maybe, will you fit one there? Like if that straggler tree will fall, fit one there, and then just maybe some more macro markets just in here. Have them all traded down here, and get on like 2 or 3 markets. Like, I'm an AoEO player, so it's just like wood in the bank, slam 5 markets. You know, it's sort of like the town center. Cram an extra town center in if you got the resources, you know, but like on steroids, man. And then PvE, it's even worse. It's literally just like, oh wow, I've got like 1.5k wood at the start of this quest. Alright, 8 markets and I'll kill up a villager, and I'll just try and make it work. But that's basically Stormkeeper's only option for gold, I think. He needs to get this relic and wall this in. Don't know if he's ever going to be able to contest that. So, Dieg in the meanwhile, things are looking great. I think he just needs to make sure he's got the upgrades in the queue, which he does. He's already gone to Imperial in the meanwhile. Stormkeeper's working towards Imperial, and he's just made a big spending to get on the age up now. So, Wingard Palace, very cost-effective army for him. Diego having gone for... where's his fourth landmark? That red palace, so... this thing is like a... an extra damage keep, basically. I think a lot of the keep landmarks really aren't that interesting. They either more or less let you build, or... well, that's the English one, and have all the normal upgrades on them already, or they've got extra health or extra damage. Pretty uninspiring compared to the other landmarks where it's like, oh man, look at my printer, or oh man, look at my printer. Nah, all landmarks are equally cool. Oh, this isn't great for Stormkeeper, had those guys rallying around there. Just in the range of the Red Palace, but he's now figured out. Diego's got that on lockdown, and more than that, he's finished it. Diego gonna set himself up for Sacred Victory here, but not on Stormkeeper's watch. He's gonna make sure he can get this relic. He may even be able to just go for the Sacred. Yeah, he can actually just rally these guys down here and clear this out and send another monk to grab that relic. And at least get some sacred gold, get some relic gold, and keep himself in this game. But Diego, he's definitely making sure that Stormkeeper's on the clock here, because he's creeping forward with these trebs. So he's going to be able to snipe all this production and all these lumber camps. So, Stormkeeper does grab that third Sacred, but in the meanwhile... oh, Diego grabs that third Sacred, but Stormkeeper... grab the relic or the Sacred, man, what are you doing? Stormkeeper's setting himself up to defend against Diego's push here, but Diego has 25 pop over him at the moment. These guys are doing a good job at maxing out, but Diego a little bit faster there. Stormkeeper, grab the relic, man! You've even got the gate over the back, so you're completely safe. And then on top of that, this is pretty much the side of your base. Well, Diego is now pinching all the gold from up the top. I'm surprised he didn't even bring these guys up to do it, to take it even faster. But it's just going to hurt Stormkeeper, and Stormkeeper, I think he knows he can't really sit in this position forever. So he's going to take the trade now. And he does have an impressive amount of a front line here. But he needs to get these bows focusing down as many of these arbs as quickly as possible, which he's doing now. Now that Havis going up just in time, it's going to make it hard for the bows to focus down everything. No, neither player left with the front line standing now, but Stormkeeper is a little bit struggling in terms of what's in the bank. He can't really produce any more crossbows from here, so he's going to pretty much have to rely on, and no man-at-arms, so he's going to have to pretty much rely on spears and longbows to get himself out of this. And I think it's good enough against the arbs, but he's not going to be able to produce enough melee that he can just engage with them like this, and when they get picked off, it's going to hurt his ability to actually then deal with the knights, because he's not going to have crossbows to deal with knights, so he's going to need to use a mix of man-at-arms and spears. And he's pumping all of his gold into man-at-arms here, but I think he probably just needs to pump spears out of the barracks. GG, well played. And that was a bit rough there for Stormkeeper in the end. Diego doing everything he needed to do, and I think Stormkeeper probably just needed to switch back to keep making the crossbows where he can out of the range, because at least they're not going to get killed by the enemy arbs so quickly. Because the man-at-arms are just getting blown up there, and they're not cheap. GG, well played. Game number 1. We're going to go to game number 2.